10. Rodin pressed the screen and waited. It would take a while for Joran to answer. The building was past its prime, and so it was cheap. Joran lived and worked up in the eaves, some kind of loft conversion that had given him what was basically one large space. Initially, Rodin knew he'd intended to partition off different sections, but over the 3 years he had known Joran, the place had become one large mess. Rodin could hear noises from others in the building. Even though it was early, others were starting their day, and soon the streets would be alive. Glancing around, Rodin changed that thought the streets would still be alive with people. Already he could see shapes moving down an alley, most likely cats or rats taking their pickings from the piles of rubbish. It was lucky the weather was not warmer. The stench when the sun hit these piles was terrible. Once a month there would be an effort to clear the area, but it soon returned to its natural messy state. There was a click as the speaker above the screen came to life. The voice that came out was cracked and barely awake.
Iceman. That you? Too early, man, too early.
Iceman. Rodin had never given his name to Joran, although he was sure the man must know it by now. But Joran used nicknames. It was one of the few things that kept him safe. He would not drop an incriminating name in conversation. Or maybe he simply couldn't remember names, and used descriptions instead. The man was fantastic with tech, but certain parts of his mind were fried. Rodin smiled for the eye. I come bearing gifts.
Anything good?
He nodded. Pure as the ocean. Rodin had never seen the ocean, and he was fairly sure there was little purity about it. But he knew how Joran would take the phrase. The ocean. The sea. C18. And of the best quality.
From the man himself.
From the man himself. This early, Joran was bound to be a little slow on the uptake.
That's worth getting out of bed for. Come on up.
The door clicked and Rodin entered. He headed up the stairs, then to a door in a wall. He pushed, found it unlocked and went up another flight. Up to Joran's sprawling mess. The man wore shorts and a t-shirt, both of some faded nondescript color. His feet were bare, despite the floor being an obstacle course.
Hey Iceman.
Joran ran a hand over his bald head. Rodin knew there was not a single hair on the man's body, then extended it. Rodin took it briefly, conscious of the slippery oils on the skin, and wondered if he should wipe his own hand down his trousers. He decided against it. He scanned the room quickly. A large desk to one end covered in screens and gadgets, wires everywhere. A couple of easy chairs, a table between them festooned with mugs and pipes. To one side there was what Rodin thought was a bed, or possibly simply a mattress on the floor, a heap of covers sprawled across it. There was a food prep area with a full sink and half-eaten food. And through an open door, a toilet seat up and a bath. Rodin could see the grime inside it from where he stood. Joran followed Rodin's eyes.
Yeah, I know. One day I'll get on top of this place.
Rodin shrugged. Each to their own. If Joran was happy living like this, who was Rodin to argue?
So like you said you had some pearls?
Rodin drew out the envelope, opening it for Joran to peer inside. He watched Joran nod his head as he counted.
5. If they're from the man himself, must have set you back a bit.
I hope they're worth it. Joran smiled, showing 3 missing teeth. Rodin had never asked about these, but he thought poor hygiene was the reason rather than violence.
They're always worth it, man. You should partake sometime. Tell you they'll take you somewhere else.
Rodin pointedly looked round the room. Joran looked sheepish.
Yeah, well, it's good to take a break now and then.
He coughed.
So 5 pearls? A gift?
No such thing as a gift. You know that.
Knew there'd be a catch. But I can't work this early. You know that.
You're up. You can start. I'll even put some coffee on for you. Joran screwed his face up.
Can't see how you can take that shit. Gimme something pure and white any day.
Rodin reached into the envelope, bringing out one of the pearls held between his thumb and first finger. He watched Joran's eyes consume it. Usual deal. One now, the rest on completion. But I'd like results fast.
You always do, man. Too much of a rush. Iceman should be like a glacier, but you're like an avalanche, yeah? Live up to your name.
He was drifting. Rodin needed to bring him back. How quick can you work for 4 more of these little things? Joran shrugged.
You know what makes me tick, Iceman. You know what gets my pecker pointed and my fingers flying.
He reached out, but Rodin held the pill steady, nodding towards the desk. Let's keep the pearl in the oyster for now. Joran deflated, but he would have known this was coming. Rodin had made the mistake of letting him take a pill before starting work once, and had needed to come down heavy to force Joran to get off his backside and get the job done. Rodin knew the temptation to take the pill would be too strong, and so did Joran. That is why he had the box. Joran shuffled to the desk, returning with a metal box. He opened the lid, and Rodin placed the pill inside, laying it carefully on the red cushion. Joran closed the lid and turned the dial. A small screen showed a figure, a time display counting down. Set it for 2 hours.
Oh man.
And make sure you work for those 2 hours. Joran sighed as he made the alterations, knowing that he would not see, let alone take his little pearl until the 2 hours were up. He shuffled back to his desk, placing the box on a small shelf in prominent view. A reminder of what he was working for. He came back. Rodin had the micro screen out of his pocket, the envelope already hidden away. He saw Joran's eyes widen.
Good bit of tech, that. Bit more work and they might start taking over from the old pocket screens.
But not powerful enough at the moment.
Course not. Can't fit the gubbins in.
Rodin wondered if he used that word to avoid confusing others with technical terms, or if he simply couldn't remember what all the stuff inside was called. But at least he knew how it all worked.
Useful for storing data on.
He continued, head tilting as he looked at the smooth surface. He was probably watching the light playing on it.
There much on it?
Rodin shrugged. It's been cleared.
Doesn't mean anything.
That's why I've brought it here. I need to get everything I can. Joran looked over his shoulder at the box.
That it? 5 little beauties and all you want is the data from the micro?
Rodin nodded. That's it. He knew it was a fairly simple job for someone like Joran. And he knew that the cost of the pills was far higher than the fees Joran would have asked for. But he wanted this done as a priority. He wanted Joran's undivided attention on this.
Sure there's nothing nasty on it?
What, like pictures of this room? Joran laughed.
Hey, I'm immune to the nasties, you know what I mean.
He reached his hand out, and Rodin passed the micro screen over.
Shouldn't be a problem. Do you want to stay while I work? I could clear a chair.
There was always that offer, and there was always the refusal. Other things to do. I'll be back in 1 hour 45.
Usual deal.
Usual deal. They both understood. The pillbox would open, and Joran would get the first part of the payment. The envelope with the other 4 pills would make their way into his hands once Rodin had checked that the job was complete. And Rodin thought, once Joran had taken that first pill, he wouldn't be interested in the others for a good while. Rodin would have time to take a long, hard look at any data he uncovered. He turned, Joran already at his desk booting up screens and clearing space for work. All his talk of tiredness was gone, he had a mission. And if his mind wavered, the box was sitting on the shelf just by his head. Rodin left. Joran was probably unaware of the door closing. It was relatively easy to get others to do what you wanted, he thought, as he made his way out to the street. It was simply a matter of giving them an incentive. For most, money worked. For others, drugs. There was no action without motivation.